Welcome everyone to the Uncharted podcast. My name is Sanidhya Khajuria, and this is a podcast where we take you through interesting conversations with interesting people. On this pilot episode on the podcast, we have with us Priya Kini, who works currently as an industrial designer with Ather Energy. We talked a lot about industrial design, what it really is, where does it fit into product development cycle, and a bunch of other things. I hope you'll find the conversation interesting, and if you do so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast because we'll be releasing new episodes every new week. All right, see you on the podcast. The episode starts in three, two, one. Just to start off, I would like to say, and we were talking on this same thing that I was cold DMing a lot of people, and it's really hard to get people onto the podcast. So thank you for making time, firstly.
Oh yeah, I know it can be hard to get people's time, especially if it's a weekend. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad that I could be a part of this.
great. So this is officially the first podcast, as you know. So you are the first guest officially on the podcast. So
Okay.
I'll just dive right in. Tell me
Yeah,
what
sure.
is industrial design? Because so I came across your podcast on YouTube and I was really fascinated. Like, what is really industrial design? After researching a bit about it, it seemed not so not so common as a career which people pursue. I mean, engineering design is primarily what you see people pursuing, but this seems to be a combination of that. So tell me more about like what is industrial design?
So I'll be honest, it took me a while also to understand what industrial design is. And I think I've had the hardest time over the last few years explaining to people what I do for a living. So industrial design definitely is something that people don't know much about. It's technically product design, but that's kind of been
Hmm.
stolen by digital product design. So it's the design of all kinds of physical products and experiences, from like the concept to the manufacturing phase. So it's anything that you hold physically and interact with physically is likely been designed by an industrial designer. So it kind of combines art, design, business, and manufacturing. So there is a lot of engineering that's involved in it. While industrial designers don't necessarily take care of a lot of the engineering aspects, we work very, very closely with engineers to make things mass manufacturable. Or even if it's smaller scale, at the end of the day, to make something real, physically real, we do need engineering support to make that happen. So that's kind of industrial design. So essentially, we solve problems, but with physical outcomes. Sort of, yeah.
Got it. So you mentioned like working closely with engineers. How is it? How does it exactly work out? I mean, do you get sort of the functionality built by them primarily, and you sort of or you firstly give the overall design how you want this thing to look to I mean how you want this thing to be to appear. Is that how it works out, or?
So I think it depends on the type of product, and of course, it depends on different industries as well. So very often you'll find that once the design is closed from a design point of view, then engineers get involved and we find a way to make it happen. So sometimes the engineers are involved from the beginning itself, right? So a lot of like when it's technology based, a lot of it depends on the engineering technology, and then we kind of build the hardware around it. But sometimes we just have
Hmm.
concepts that we want to execute as designers. And we, once we've kind of closed a little bit on what we want it to look like and feel like, we work with engineers to see how it can be made. But of course, the entire process, at least from how I know it, it's a lot of back and forth. So while design
Hmm.
intent is captured by the designer initially, there's a lot of back and forth that happens with engineers because parts have to fit inside, things have to actually work at the end of the day. A lot of
Hmm.
mechanisms, tech, whatever it may be, they take up space, right? And not all designers are aware of how much space it takes up, how exactly things need to fit in. As you develop the product and there's testing that happens, certain things go wrong and things have to be changed, which also will result in change in design. So from what I've seen around me and from what I've worked on personally, there's a lot of back and forth that happens even once engineering gets involved. So to answer your question, they can be involved from the beginning, right from when the project is started, so that you kind of understand the constraints right from the start. Or in some teams, there is a case where the designer takes care of everything until the product idea at least is ready. And then we also work on 3D modeling and things like that. So the designer will have a basic idea of what
Hmm.
this should look and feel like. And then the engineers get involved to help, kind of solidify the whole thing and make it real.
Got it, got it. Tell me more about like how you got into this career. Uh, How did it all happen?
It's actually not very glamorous. I'll tell you, when I was younger, I just knew I wanted to get into something creative. So I thought
Hmm.
of architecture, design. That was kind of the two that I was battling. I mean, I was trying to decide between. And I think I just chose design because it felt like a more fun thing. And honestly, I didn't want to study 5 years. So that was like, okay, architecture's out. And I think within design, the only things I recognized on the application form were graphic design and industrial design. And I thought, okay, it should be cool to pick something physical, I guess. Like I'm a pretty hands-on person. And like I was 17, I didn't know what I was doing. So I sort of just chose this on a whim. It felt like it could be really fun to explore. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, I'm an industrial designer today. So there was very little, I would say, passion about creating physical products, if I'm being very honest,
Hmm.
that pushed me in this direction. I kind of didn't have much of a clue what it really involved. And I think till date, my understanding of this field is evolving. So a lot of what I thought I was getting into and what it is today is very different, but I'm loving it nevertheless.
Nice, nice. Is this a really new field, or has this been like since quite a while now?
I think
Um,
there have always been industrial designers out there because there have been physical products that have
hmm.
existed for a long time, right? So that's time immemorial. There have been physical products we've interacted with. As a field itself, I wouldn't say it's new, but I would say it's picking up a lot more now. There's a lot of industrial designers that exist globally and have existed for the last few decades. But earlier, maybe to some extent, it was considered like engineers that transition into industrial design. But as a core
Hmm.
subject in itself, I remember when I was applying to college, which was now like 9 years ago, it did like design as a field itself in India did not was not very rampant, right? So even explaining that I want to pursue this field was a bit like confusing to everybody because it's like, what is design? You know, what do you really do? And
Hmm.
so it has existed as a field. I think it's picking up a lot more now. I think there's a lot more colleges offering it as a subject, and a lot more people in general are looking to get into this field. It's but specializing in industrial design, I would say in India, I think if you look at it, maybe it hasn't existed beyond, it hasn't been rampant beyond say 5 to 10 years. Yeah,
Got it. I think it's like what I can think of it is that it's like the careers which start once a career starts off, it takes some time for it to eventually branch out into small niches. So maybe it was like definitely it was there always because people were designing products
exactly.
either consciously or subconsciously. I mean that was always happening. But
Yeah.
to call it as a specific career, I think it has been picking up now.
Exactly. So for
So
it to be taught in
hmm,
colleges as a subject, I think is a
yeah.
lot more recent. But I think it, at the end of the day, it's a mix of aesthetics and engineering and business, right? So it brings together
Hmm,
all of these things. So I think through people's life experience, I mean, work experiences itself, they might have just sort of branched into industrial design and designing physical products without the core education aspect of it. And I think there's a lot of people in the industry today that may not have had a formal industrial design education, but
hmm,
have been designing products for decades, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
Cool, cool. Tell me, so now you're working with Ather Energy, right? Tell me more about that. Like, how has your experience been? And yeah, just in general.
Yeah. So yeah, I work at Ather Energy right now as an industrial designer. So this is different from automotive design. So there are folks that design the scooter itself and the vehicle itself. What I primarily work on, and I'm not from the auto industry, okay? I didn't know the first thing about automobile design, and I was very confused as to how I would contribute here initially. But safe to say that I'm absolutely loving it. I work in a team that I think all of us take care of different experiences, accessories, merchandise, everything that kind of works in the ecosystem of the vehicle. And depending on what project gets thrown at us, we kind of take it on. And it's not always directly linked to riding a scooter and knowing like the know-hows of that. It's a
Hmm.
lot of experiential stuff, which just kind of brings delight to a user's commute, right? So that's kind of what, as a team, that's kind of what we work on. And we take up different projects in that realm as we move forward. Yeah.
Hmm. Got it. Can you just tell me like how, just from your maybe recent past experience, how does one project evolve like as you work on, from the design phase to the delivery phase? I mean, how does that pan out?
It's very chaotic. I'll tell you that. So
Yeah,
I think,
that's like that's a
yeah, no, I
that's a
think
one thing which is common across industries, but
I think in college also we were taught. like we never really understood what it took to make something mass manufactured, right? So even at this point, even to
Hmm.
make 500 pieces of something, I think the fact that like tooling gets involved, there's a lot of, and the thing about physical product is that there's a lot of changes that you can't make later or that's complicated to make later. Right. So once tools are made for manufacturing and then something is not working, there's testing, there's so many like different stakeholders that are involved in this and so many things that need to work together to make a product function that I don't think I understood in the past. Right. I had no idea that it was always like, okay, you think of something cool, it solves a problem, and then you just make it. Like you just 3D print it or you just, figure out how
Hmm.
to get it manufactured. That's somebody else's problem. But I think today it's also how do you sell this, right? Price points, understanding materials, manufacturing processes, just costing in general, retail, all of those things sort of come into it. And then there's, of course, like it actually functioning. Like, does it work the way it does? From a testing point of view, like how many years will this last? If there's an issue, like what if it breaks or there's an issue seen within 6 months? We have to go back to the drawing board and see what is really causing this problem. Right. So I think in my team in general and where I've seen industrial design, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And it's a lot of things that's hard to predict
Hmm.
as well. So I would say product development is a challenge. And of course, like a lot of things out there, it's definitely not straightforward. There's a lot of zigzags that you have to kind of go through
Hmm.
and hurdles that you have to cross till you make a product real. And I think even once it gets real, like you said, evolving. It's constantly evolving. I think once things go out on field, there are more things that consumers kind of communicate back to you saying this is not working or this could be improved. And you're constantly kind of trying to make the best version of a certain product. And if your company has the bandwidth to allow you to do that, I think that's the best way. You learn from your consumers, you learn from your mistakes, and you keep making minor improvements to
Hmm.
eventually put the best product out there. And even that will keep improving and growing. So,
Right. Yeah, I hear your point because like the industry which you are in seems to be like it won't have like a very fast iteration cycle in terms of building products
yeah.
compared to let's say digital first or the the tech or the software kind of companies because they have more I would say bandwidth or ability to fail
Yeah,
and basically build things more iteratively. But
exactly.
here, I think in hardware first industries or things like that, the whole build cycle is maybe longer, bit longer.
And it's
So,
the beauty, I
hmm,
think, of digital products in that way is the fact that there's even an option to test with some people, to roll out a feature, to see how
yeah.
it's working, see how people are reacting,
But
and then,
but but
pull
that
it back.
but do you
No, I'm
not do
saying
like mock-ups or
we definitely do. We definitely do. But the kind of audience that we can reach with it, I think, is a little bit different. Plus, it's in their hand physically, right? So for testing, we can do that.
hmm,
But we can't roll it out to every customer and then, try it out and take it all back and be like, no, 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 okay, give this back. We'll give you something new. Whereas with an application,
hmm,
from what I understand, it's a little bit easier to roll out a feature to everyone maybe. And if it's not working or if there's a bug or there's some kind of issue, you can change it like over the air, right? You're able to change
hmm,
or make changes or make iterations and stuff
yeah,
and it's still with them already. Whereas for us, if there's something wrong, we have to call back all of those products and replace them because it's in their hand already, right? What can we do? But with digital, I feel like I wouldn't say easier. I feel like it's a different route that you can take where you can test out. It doesn't have to reach its full
hmm,
cycle. You can try something different, add a few things, see how it works, and then roll it out to the larger public without as much, logistical nightmare of having to ship things out
yeah.
to people
There
and
are a
things like
lot of
that.
logistics involved
It is.
in,
It is.
in this specific niche, I feel,
Yeah.
compared to like software where you can deliver over the air, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Even simple
So,
things like, we have to consider things like packaging. What does the packaging look and
hmm,
feel like? How much weight does this thing even have? What is the cost implication of shipping each of these things? All of those things kind of count into costing finally. And I think a lot of it kind of boils down to just business case, right? Like, does it make sense to sell
hmm,
this? While a lot of things do, there's a lot more factors that can kill the project when it comes to physical. That's what I've been noticing at least. There's a lot of things that have to work together. And yeah, it's fun though. I won't deny. It's a lot of fun. I think it drives a lot of us nuts in the process. But to see that product finally come out there and for people to be using it, people to be appreciating it, even giving feedback and to have that physically being held by someone and being interacted with the way you intended, I think there's a beauty in that that's a little hard to explain. It's a very dramatic way to put it, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree because we don't like really realize like the products that we use on a daily basis. They actually go through a design phase
Yeah.
and then actual implementation and engineering and all which is involved. Like you can take a very simple example of earphones, like this earphones I'm
Yeah,
wearing or
yeah.
anything. Everything goes through the design phase to see what will the users really like in terms of
Yeah.
how it will impact the usability, what makes something more user centric. So all those things, yeah, I think that's what people maybe don't appreciate, but I really think that that's pretty great that
I think
that
it's
gets
nice
done.
that people don't have to appreciate. It kind of is invisible, and that's the good thing. When
Yeah,
people notice it, that's when
correct.
it's a problem. So when it's
Yes.
invisible and no one has a problem, I think that's when we know we've done a good job. When no one's complaining about
Yeah.
anything, and like they don't have to appreciate the thought and work that's gone into it. But the fact that they're not complaining, that's a win. That
Yeah,
means we've
because
done
it's
something
easy to
right.
like spot. It is easy to spot an issue
Yeah, yeah.
than to say
But
that okay, oh, this is really great.
yeah,
That does not happen very frequently.
but for
But
example, just the
uh,
fact that your headphones
hmm,
fit comfortably on your ear, you're able to adjust it means that the company has been able to adapt it to different head sizes and different ear sizes. And the fact that you are comfortable and the 10 other people that use it are also comfortable and the thousands of people that are interacting with it are happy with the product, I think that becomes a win that we've done
right.
something
Take an
right as
example of
designers.
like iPhone or something like an
Yeah.
iPhone. Like when it started, I don't think, if I'm correct, it was the first touch smartphone, was it?
Yeah. From yeah, if I can remember correctly. Yeah.
Hmm. So yeah, so those kind of breakthrough designs do happen, and that's when people will really say, "Oh, this is a really great product."
Yeah.
But most probably, like as you mentioned, they'll spot the issues more easily.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think today with
so
media and
hmm,
everything, it's so easy to call out things also. You can just post something on Twitter and then you can
yeah,
destroy a product. You can have a massive reviewer online just like tear a product apart and automatically it's gone, right? Like your sales dip immediately. So there's a lot of different factors that come into whether a product made it or is like
hmm,
won at the end of the day. Yeah.
nice. Um, okay, I want to know more about like what sort of softwares or technologies do you use on a daily basis to,
Um,
is it Photoshop? I bet it's Photoshop, CAD, like you mentioned.
yes.
Um,
So it starts, I mean, I think there's a wide range. There's a lot of people that still prefer putting pen to paper and like whether it's
hmm,
pencil, whether it's, pen, sketch pen, Copic
the
markers.
old school
There's
designers, is
a
it?
lot of designers that actually get a lot of their creative juices flowing when they're actually physically drawing. There's of course
Hmm,
Procreate is another sketching app, Sketchbook. There's a lot of like sketching apps that are out there with touchscreen devices that are available. There's definitely the whole Adobe suite. So with depending on what exactly you're working on, there's Photoshop, there's Illustrator, there's After Effects, Premiere Pro. Like there's a lot of this. It's not just industrial design, right? So many a time you need to pitch this even internally. If you have to pitch this, you have to use multiple softwares that come together to be able to put that story together, right? And there's of course CAD softwares, multiple different types of CAD softwares, parametric, non-parametric. It depends on the kind of product you're making, and I think as personal preference of the designer. And beyond that, there's rendering softwares also, right? So there's Keyshot, there's Cinema 4D. People use a bunch of different softwares for visualization, to basically make things look real and to put them in the context of where they will be used without having to make physical products. Then there's, of course, 3D printing and other manufacturing tools that come in later on in the process
hmm.
after, let's say, design. Even during the design process, very often you will 3D print little mock-ups just to test out ergonomics, size, shape, form, and basic things like that. So I think that pretty much covers, at least from my
Hmm. So
experience, that covers the kind of technologies and softwares that industrial designers use.
you talked about 3D printing. Is it a big machine? No, what exactly is it? I
You get
have not
different
really
sizes,
seen one.
actually. A 3D
Oh,
printing machine can be like yay
okay,
big.
small portable one
Um,
also as well.
there are, you do get portable ones. A lot of industrial designers I know have them at home, have like a little 3D printer machine. For something that's the size of your phone or smaller, you don't need like a
Hmm.
massive machine, right? And I think there's huge ones as well. There's a lot of automotive companies that have like massive 3D printers, like the size of a car. Even I think I feel like it's gone that there are ones that are that big now. But I think for our use case, we don't need to make like we might outsource the larger printing stuff. But
Hmm.
in-house for like quick prototyping and validation, we have smaller 3D printers that can make anything up to maybe the size of a basketball, um, if needed.
Right. I just want to talk a bit about electric vehicles in terms of
Hmm.
design.
Yeah.
So I personally don't like the look of how electric cars look. I mean,
Okay.
how do you call really that thing a car?
Okay.
They would not have they don't have a grill,
Hmm.
and you can just directly spot a car and say that it's an electric car. So
Yeah.
why is it designed like that? Is there an intention? I mean, is it intentionally made to look like that, or
So from the
why does it look different?
manufacturer's, yeah,
Hmm.
from the manufacturer's intention point of view, I'm not too sure, but I can just tell you my view on it. I don't hate it. I would say I don't dislike it. I think that at the end of the day, it is something different and it's important for it to stand out to a certain degree.
Hmm.
The fact that when a car drives by, you're able to say, hey, that's an electric car, that's a win for the company, right? It's like you can see it and you know
Hmm.
exactly, even from far away, you can tell exactly what it does. So I feel like it's doing its own marketing that way. But I think it's also a revolutionary industry. I think something Ather also was able to do was kind of change the status quo on what an electric vehicle should look like and what vehicles itself
Hmm.
should look like, right? So when you said that it doesn't look like a car, it's like that's okay. It's okay if it doesn't look like what we conventionally think is what a car should look like. Maybe the evolution of design is such that these things need to change, or that it's been looking like a car for too long. Let's try and change that a little bit. And there's a lot of companies out there that I think are taking the bolder step of changing that conventional idea of what a car should look like and trying to go a little bit different. So there are obviously some consumers that are like, I don't want that change. I don't approve. But I think there's a lot of people that are really excited about the whole EV world and want new, they want
Hmm.
different, they want change. And I think that's sort of what EV does in its technology itself, right? It's introducing something that's new, that's different, that has different potential out there. And I think design is just trying to follow that as well. Well, there's something new happening on the tech side and the capabilities side. We should also do something different on the design side to make it stand out. And I'm guessing that's the perspective, but that's what I think works really well with just any industry that's taking a bold step to change status quo.
Yeah. You also mentioned like accessories
Hmm.
that like you probably work on in terms of like the electric vehicles. So can you tell me a bit more about like what all are those um, in terms of the electric vehicle industry primarily?
Yeah.
Like
So
what?
because we have,
Hmm.
so Ather as a company primarily works on the two-wheeler segment, right? So we have just an example of the accessories. It's very simple things like, a floor mat for the floorboard, a seat cover for the
Hmm.
seat itself because you don't want it to get dirty, scratched, whatever it may be. Throttle grips, right? Just like little grips to make the throttle more comfortable or softer. There's an accessory called the frunk, which I had the opportunity to design for the latest vehicle, which is a front storage. It's like kind of like a bag, but it attaches to the front of the headstock of the scooter. And you sort
Hmm.
of just use it as a bag pretty much. But it's attached, you store things in there, and you can take all the stuff out when you finally reach back home. So whether it's groceries, your mobile phone, whatever it may be, there's a storage unit that's linked to your product, to your scooter. And it's just simple things like that. I would say just a lot of things to make the user's commute convenient. The helmets also that we sell, we recently released a smart helmet. Even that comes under the accessories line because it's anything that works in the ecosystem of the vehicle to either make commute easier, make commute more convenient, or just bring delight to anyone that rides our scooter. I think that would kind of come under the accessories segment.
Yeah. Talking about like EVs, I think they
Mm-hmm.
do have a value in a lot of value in cities like Bangalore or the high traffic cities where the primary objective of a person is to just commute and not
Mm-hmm.
not specifically be tied to buying a particular vehicle. So the access and ease is probably one of the biggest aspects of that. Um, I personally have not like driven any of the EVs. So
Hmm.
is it like how are they so soundless? There is no. It feels like the
I
engine does not exist. The car is
Yeah,
just moving.
it's a different
So
technology completely. So I'm not one to
yeah.
comment on that. I don't think I know enough about like the
Hmm.
tech on how it works. I'll be very honest. But I think it's a completely different technology and when you compare it to an internal combustion engine, right? So I
Hmm.
think in many, even the Ather currently is not completely silent. There is a certain sound that comes when it drives by. as as for the excuse me, as for the technology itself and how it becomes soundless, I have no idea. But I think it's very cool that you no longer have to deal with the like a car drives by, it doesn't have to be noisy. You don't have to like know per se when a car drives by your street. But I think there's a certain amount of sound that's really nice. And I think beyond that threshold, it just gets like really noisy. Right. And I think at the end of the day, if a car can still honk, it can be noisy. So it doesn't matter if it's EV or
Yeah.
not. It still finds a way to make noise on the streets. But I think it's just the evolution of the EV tech itself I think just the nature of it by itself that allows it to be pretty much noiseless when it's on the roads.
Hmm. Nice, interesting. I don't really know since how long has like electric vehicle and the products been picking up in the country. But lately we have seen a lot of players come into the picture, and and that's how basically the ecosystem evolves when you
Yeah.
have competitors and all that. So yeah, I think it would be interesting in future to see more and more products coming up in this segment and. Yeah, maybe that's the way to go because eventually sustainability and environment is one of the aspects like which a lot of countries and companies will sort of have to transition to,
Yeah.
just like it happened with digital, right? Before pre-2000s era, I don't think a lot of companies were digital, but then they were forced to because,
Exactly.
eventually. So that's one shift. Maybe would happen. So yeah, just to add to that. And so t on that same note, tell me more about sustainability. Um, I was just going through what industrial design is, although I did not get much context. So, but what really is sustainability? I mean, and we were just talking about that before also. Like you can't really build a fully sustainable product to say that it has zero impact on the environment.
Yeah.
But how does it go along with you you building as a business? Because eventually you want to every company is a business at the end of the day, right? So how do these two things go hand in hand? Or what really sustainability? You can
I
just
think as a designer, sustainability is always like a big question mark. At least for me, it always
hmm
has been. And I think the definition of sustainability is it's always confused me. And I think that, at least from my understanding, as we discussed earlier as well, and something that a designer named Michael DiTullo also said was that the only sustainable product out there is no new product. Like anything that you have to manufacture and
hmm
make or whatever from scratch is going to have some impact, right? So the real idea of sustainability itself, like what is that? Um, I'm still learning. I think I'm still trying to understand what is really a sustainable product. I think today I try to live by the definition of if it makes less of an impact than than its alternative, it is a direction in the right route. I would say that I would say is a direction towards sustainability, something on those lines. As a company, I think there's a lot of research and just R&D in general happening in how EVs can be more sustainable. I think right now there's a lot of question about the raw materials and where it's sourced from. So while it may not contribute to pollution on the streets, right? What about the electricity? Where's that being sourced? What happens to EVs after their life, right? So at the end of the day, there's still a battery, there's still a lot of plastic panels or whatever metal, all of that. What happens to that at the end of life? I think that's something that companies try to slowly look into after building the product itself. It's okay, what happens to it at the end of its life, right? Say someone's
hmm
used the EV for 7 to 8 years. Does the company take it back? Do we partner with people who recycle certain parts of it? Can the batteries, some part of the battery be recycled and brought back into the ecosystem? I think in many ways that idea of circularity is what businesses slowly are trying to focus on, just from a sustainability standpoint, right? And what materials we choose for packaging, what like wherever we can kind of reduce
Hmm.
plastic or reduce conventionally unsustainable materials. I think as a company, any company is slowly trying to take those steps. Okay, does it make sense for us to shift to this? Does it make cost sense for us to move from this material to that material? Because everyone knows plastic is likely the cheapest option that's out there right now. So beyond that, do we have the bandwidth or the capabilities to move to a more sustainable, possibly more expensive packaging material or just material in the vehicle itself, right? Because everything at the end of the day has a cost impact as well. And I think that is potentially the one of the biggest wedges in the sustainability spectrum, I would
Hmm.
say. And then there's scalability, right? There's a lot of, I think, innovation happening on the material front, where there's a lot of material that comes from the earth. There's biomaterials. There's a lot of things that come from waste. You can use waste to regenerate materials again. But then it comes to, okay, how scalable is that, right? If we're working with large volumes, can that really meet our requirements on that front? So I think there's a lot of progress happening, and there's still always going to be a long way to go. But I definitely see a pretty strong shift towards companies at least caring a little bit more about it. And of course, there's the whole greenwashing and people pretending like they're doing something when they're really not. And there's a lot of different ways people are executing this whole sustainability idea. But I think it's still a step in the right direction if people are talking about it and thinking about it. So that, in my head, is a good sign. It's a plus.
Yeah. Like when you mentioned the cyclic product, I mean
Mhm.
the cyclic mode of building products, it reminded me of the environment class we used to have back in school where
Yeah.
you're taught that what are those three R's or something?
Reduce, reuse,
Recycle,
recycle.
yeah, reuse, reduce, recycle. So
Yeah,
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 I was
yeah.
just reminded of that.
Yeah. So
Um,
a lot of the
and
times, at least I ignored so much in
hmm,
that environmental class because I
yeah,
just didn't. It didn't make sense. Like math made sense to me. Why I needed it? Maybe not why I need it in the future, but it felt like a core subject that's worth putting my
hmm,
effort into. But growing up, I don't know. I never thought that environmental science or studies like okay, something burned down somewhere 35, 40 years ago. What relevance does it have today? I don't think I was so ignorant as a kid that I don't think I understood the implications of any of what we were studying. But today I realize, man, I really should have paid attention in those classes and not assumed that it would not happen to me. There's so much that's going on right now. There's so much that I would understand better if I had just paid attention, I think, when I was 11 or 12 years old in those classes. But a lot of it is very, very relevant today. I think we're seeing the environmental impacts also just around us on a daily basis. And I think that there definitely is some action to be taken. In what form, I'm not sure. There's a lot of companies that are taking a step forward, larger industries that also don't care. So I think
hmm,
right now, we need to find a balance between, yes, of course, capitalism and like getting products out there, innovation,
yeah.
everything, but we need to be a little bit more conscious of the impact all of that is having on the earth and just the environment in general. And I see the shift slowly
Hmm.
happening. So it's nice to see, but I'm also very curious to see how it turns out later.
Yeah, talking about subjects, like I think there are a few subjects which most people might have not liked in their school, like history, environment, and it's
Yeah,
later in
yeah,
life that they realize, oh, this was really interesting. I never paid attention to it.
yeah,
Because we are taught, at least back in the days, to see things from a more of a utility angle. That okay, how can I use it?
yeah,
How is this useful? How is history useful? It's not
yeah,
useful, so I will not study it, or I don't
yeah,
want to have.
yeah.
And also the way I feel it was taught, at least to me. Um,
Oh,
uh,
there's
it's
definitely a gap. I think there
yeah.
was never a context of how this will be useful to you
Hmm.
later on in life. And again, history and stuff is career agnostic, right? Like history, environmental science. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're an engineer or a doctor or a designer or even an artist, whatever it may be. I feel like all of these fields have more of an impact in your life than, say, just mathematics as a core subject. And no one told
Hmm.
us that. No one really explained that to us when we were kids. And it was just one more subject we have to read and read and read and study and vomit out something in an exam. And that's all we understood from it. Right. And I think the way it was taught was without the context of how this could be useful to you, right? Understanding of politics, civics, seeing how like it'll impact how you see the world around you and how you understand certain people, behaviors, cultures. You leave the country, you go somewhere else. There's so much history that's involved in why certain things are the way they are in different places. And I think having that context would have definitely helped us maybe care a little bit more and pay more attention to what we were learning as opposed to just learning it for the sake of it, right? So that I think
Yeah,
is a bit of a gap.
money for an example. Like, I still don't know how to file an ITR. So, although I don't expect that to be taught in the school, but yeah, probably that's the reason we see a lot of Fin influencers and those people coming up because
Yeah, it's
people
actually
did not
very
really
useful.
have, yeah, people did not have that resources really.
Yeah. Oh,
So
simple
they
things
look
like
up to
I
them
still
and
don't know how to get stuff done in a bank. Like forget
yeah,
ITRs. At least there's I can ask someone to help me out with that and somebody else will take care of it. But I think going to a bank, like it's my bank account, nobody's going to go there for me and do it, right? But I don't know where to look. I don't know who I'm supposed to ask.
yeah.
I get all these emails about something that's missing, something that needs to be done, all of that, and I have no clue how to do. And it's sort of maybe the kind of thing you learn on the go, but it would be nice to have a little bit of a heads up, that this is how things function. This is what
Hmm.
you need to have as an adult. Even simple things like insurance, whatever. I'm learning all of that from my parents. And I'm very grateful that they have the know-how to teach me and they're aware of what needs to be done and I can learn from them. But I think there's a lot of people that maybe don't have that support around them and they kind of have to like thrown in the deep end and have to figure that out suddenly when they're like 21, 22 years old. And I think it's a little bit of a daunting experience coming out of the education system that we've had.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting, interesting. Coming back to design, I just want. I mean, you probably would have a lot of interest in design in general. That's why
Mhm.
you mentioned like you got into this. Tell me more about like how do designs evolve in the sense that why do we call certain designs as a modern design and certain is something as old school, right? Um,
Sorry, could you please repeat your question? I think I lost you there for a
Oh, yeah.
second.
Just okay. So I was just saying like you have a keen interest in design, right? So why do we call certain designs as modern designs and certain designs as old school? Is it always that when you look retrospectively, you say that, oh, that was old, that was something legacy, and now this is the new thing? Because talking about modern designs, I feel they lean more towards something which is more minimalistic, something which just gets the job done, right? Not too much complicated in terms of design. Is that how it is, or how do designs basically change over time? I mean, what's your idea on that?
My perspective on that, like for someone to call something modern, is just likely something that they've maybe not seen before. I don't know the
Hmm.
actual definitions of like modern, contemporary. Like I'm not
Hmm.
very well versed with the actual definitions of that. But I think that people just like to see new things very often. And there's certain times where people just don't like change. And so I think perspectives will shift based on what people are ready to accept as good design and what people are willing to say, oh, okay, this looks really good or this looks really bad, or like, oh, this is moving backwards in time because it looks too similar to something that existed ages ago. But I think a lot
Hmm.
of things also work in a cycle where it's like things that looked really good back then are now coming back into trend. Right. And I have no idea what defines trends. Like, I still don't understand it. Like, there's so many things out there that talk about trends of 2024, right? Or like things that are likely to be. Who's deciding this? How do you know this? Are we asking consumers what? I really don't know where that comes from. But I think it's just change. It's new technologies, new materials, all of that. I think as designers, we try to incorporate a lot of different new things into our concepts. And I think if consumers take well to it, it's always good for us. And sometimes it's also experimental. A lot of companies have tried stuff and it just doesn't work. People just don't accept it. And it might be a little hard to predict, even if all research teams have said this is going to work. Sometimes it goes out there and people are like, this doesn't really work.
Hmm.
And then you, again, like I said, you have one influencer or someone who people look up to. And if they have a certain opinion on whether a product looks a certain way, that kind of sticks with their audience, right? And people are like, oh yeah, that is pretty ugly, or like, oh yeah, it does look like it came from the 1900s or something. Yeah, I would be honest, I don't fully understand trends or what, from a design standpoint, what really, really works today. I
Hmm.
think we're all experimenting a little bit. And we also have to accept that it's subjective. And some people will love something you design, some people just really will not take to it. And the earlier, I think, in your career, you kind of understand that, the better. But at the end of the day, it's always best as designers to understand what other people out there are designing, what is working in the market there today, what price points things are being sold at, what kind of materials are being used, what new processes are out there, how can we optimize things. I think it's best to always keep learning and adapting your understanding of design. Something I'm still trying to do. I don't think I am the best industrial designer out there. I don't think I know everything that there is to know. I think on a daily basis, I'm also understanding that these materials even exist and how to work with even plastics, right? There's certain things, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't know. And in general, how to make something look like a premium product. What makes a product
Hmm.
premium? What makes it look cheaper? Is it just the cost of the materials you put into it, or is there a certain finish, a touch, something that you can add to it, an experience you add to it? What really makes something premium and feel modern and new? That is still something I'm trying to learn in my profession. Yeah.
Hmm. In terms of trend, I feel like it's a lot more dependent on what's currently in the pop culture, as you would say, or current social media domain, like what's just popping out. That also defines a lot in terms of what people really want. Um, so yeah, that and it's very, I agree, it's very subjective in terms of what people like. Um, like back in the days when I was in college, like I mentioned, I used to edit videos. So what I
Hmm.
found really good, great video, what a great edit. Others would say, yeah, this is just normal thing. It's not really something great. They would not. And okay, one more thing I have been for the designers and the content creators is in how easily people would just scrape off. And yeah, this is just a boring design. It's not, but you have put a lot of work in
Yeah.
that. You put a lot of effort in that.
I think
So
that's in every
that
field
really
today. I
is.
think every content creator out there, everyone that's putting their hard work into something that's
Hmm.
tangible, right? Whether it's a video, it's a movie, it could be just a song, it could be a design, a sketch, a drawing, just like a I don't know, just literally a trendy video that you've put your heart and soul into. Today, I feel like it's just so easy for someone to write it off as rubbish, and it just goes like it's all of that hard work is gone. And if it's someone that's influential, whose opinion matters out there on social media, I think it gets even harder because then they've already influenced their audience into believing that what you've put out there is just not worth their time. And then all that hard work you've put in, it just, I don't know, it goes out the window somehow. And it's a little heartbreaking.
Because with creative field, it's not like the other more logical fields, as I would say,
Yeah.
that you have a defined process. It's very like you mentioned, very intuitive, or what you are inspired at the moment. Obviously, for sure, there are like processes and those things that you have when you working professionally. But I still feel, I mean, definitely there in creative fields, it's a lot more intuitive in that sense.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And I think sometimes
hmm,
you're just working on pure assumption. It's like you
hmm,
have the approval of the designers in your team, everyone around you likes it. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, there's a bunch of designers here that think this looks great. I think it will work. Not the best way, I think, to go about it, but sometimes it is what it is. Timelines and stuff don't allow you to maybe go out there and actually test with consumers and, see how people are responding, at least with a larger group. And you're generally just working on a hunch or like assumptions. And once it goes
hmm.
out there, you just keep your fingers crossed and hope that people are vibing with the intention that you put it out with, right? And if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, yeah, you have to take the hit and you have to be ready for that.
Yeah. Also, one more interesting thing you mentioned was about the materials, right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of the materials to choose, so do you, as an industrial designer, take those decisions, or do you have a separate team which looks into what kind of materials to use, or is it like you propose firstly that okay, this is how we should go ahead? Because so there are two things. One would be like something which adds to as purely aesthetics. The other thing would be like how it functionally will add to that product.
Yeah.
So how are those decisions like? How does that part go?
So there's another, let's say, I'd say another career direction, or what do I call it? Another field of design called CMF design. So that's color, material, and finish design. So generally it works hand in hand with industrial design, but it
Hmm.
specializes in primarily things like color, material, and finish. well, all of these things obviously coming together to meet the functionality intent and whatnot. So, as a designer, when you come up with a particular product, you generally work with a CMF designer to finalize those aspects. So, as an industrial designer, you have a certain vision. Not all teams have CMF designers, so very often you have the industrial designer themselves sort of putting on that hat and taking care of those things as well. But CMF design is a completely different field and a niche, I would say, in itself, which primarily looks into maybe aesthetics, also functionality, just like whether it's a glossy, matte finish, what percentage of gloss, matte, like all kinds of very, very detailed, very nuanced field is in my opinion, that I think has the max impact on how something looks at the end of the day. So while the form and the functionality is of course taken care of by an industrial designer, I think a CMF specialist is very, very important to bring the whole thing together and sort of add,
Hmm.
I would say, personality or character to what you've envisioned as a physical product. So we obviously will work hand in hand with them to finalize the material. Of course, there's also engineers involved with the material stuff because if it needs to survive environmental conditions, if it needs to withstand sort of dust, water, rain, if it has to be rigid enough to survive sort of impact, all of that input will be given by an engineer. And I think just from an aesthetic standpoint, maybe a sustainability standpoint also, the CMF specialist will come in and add in their points as well.
Hmm.
So I think the whole thing sort of is a mix of everybody's inputs and the final design is an outcome of that.
Nice, nice, interesting. Also, talking a bit more about like, do you have any piece of advice for someone who's just starting out? Because not many people are pursuing this industrial design. So,
Yeah.
what would you say? Anyone who is anywhere closely or remotely interested in design, or already is interested in specifically in industrial design?
I would say today it's a little harder, at least what I'm noticing is it's a little harder to get into the industry. I see a lot of
Hmm.
colleges that are offering industrial design as a field, and a lot of students out there that just say that there's no jobs out there and there's not enough, what do you say? Yeah, just jobs that are taking industrial designers in. But I think my piece of advice would be, of course, to understand that it's not as easy as it looks. And while there is a lot of creative ability, and I love what I do, I won't deny, there's a lot of creative ability. It's incredible to really build physical products. There's a lot of things that maybe college and before you get into the workforce, you don't really know or is not taught to you.
Hmm.
And the understanding that it's you work hand in hand with engineers, with business, with and a lot of other aspects that come into it that maybe don't allow you to make the most like aspirational product that you had initially envisioned. Be ready to let go and take a step back and say, this is a product you're designing, but it's also, it has a lot of other factors that come into making it what it is. Understand that early. And also, I think the skill set required to be an industrial designer goes beyond just the ability to sketch and CAD model and whatever. It's a lot of soft skills. It's a lot of convincing people, pitching to people. I think it's just getting people together to I don't know, take forward a shared idea, being able to communicate things, a lot of other soft skills that also come into the play. So having just the best hard skills is only part of the process. I think that especially when you get into the industry, you end up spending a lot more time doing the communication aspect than actually putting pen to paper and, sketching and designing if it's your real passion per se. But I would say that, like I mentioned earlier, there's a different joy to building physical products and having people interact with it. And when you see that prototype or that thing in your hand, holding it, I think it's a different kind of joy than digital. I would say both have its pluses, but if someone specifically wants to get into industrial design, know that there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of the chaos. But if you really see yourself as someone that how do I say it? I have to think about this one a little bit. But I think the general thing is that be ready for it to not be clean and for it not to be a linear
Hmm.
process. Like most things in life, of course. I think this is just general advice to anyone getting into adult life. But it's there's a lot of pluses to it as well, and it's a really really nice, interesting field. There's always innovation. Depending on what industry you work in, also there's so much potential, right? Like physical product starts from like from furniture to consumer electronics to absolutely anything that you touch physically to vehicle level stuff also. So I think
Hmm.
that the potential of this field is huge, and depending on what industry you end up getting into, you learn different types of things, and you come out of it, I think, a very well-rounded person. I think it helps you understand engineering, you understand aspects of business, you understand the creative aspects of it as well, and it kind of, yeah, it's a very holistic approach to building something or building anything. And yeah, I would recommend it to anyone that's willing to put in that work. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the this particular domain is involves a lot of strong collaboration with a lot of stakeholders,
Yeah.
a lot of people, and there are some professions like that. Like you take example of product management and all,
Yeah.
right? And some of the career paths, they involve more of a siloed work, right? That you need to be working on this. Although that happens quite frequently in almost all of the careers, if you look at the junior roles.
Yeah.
So, but I really feel that yeah, this is a really good career path if anyone wants to pursue.
It's a very,
Anyone who is interested in design. And because the first thing like which comes to mind when you think of design, when a layman like me would think of design is like, oh, this is like Photoshop and
yeah.
people working on graphic design. Like that's the closest possibility we have for design for a lot of people. So, just to for anyone who is listening to this, there are other fields which design sort of branches into. So this is one of them.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think I was very grateful to have support to get into something like this, despite people not knowing what it is, right? My family was very supportive from the start. And I don't think I faced a lot of resistance initially when I was trying to get into this field. And I would also
hmm,
like to say that even today, where I am today, I don't think I know like 90% of what this industry involves. I think that every day I'm learning something new. Every day I'm realizing that, okay, no, I need to upskill on this front and I need to learn something different to be able to make products real. And I'm learning so much from the people around me. On a daily basis, I'm like, oh my God, that also exists. Or, oh my God, this is also an aspect of industrial design that I need to look into. So even once you come into the field, you realize there's so much within it that you can learn on a daily basis. And that's the beauty of it in a way. It's overwhelming sometimes, but yes, it does exist. And it's a great way to do something creative, but also see tangible outcomes at the end of it.
awesome. Awesome. This was a great session, Priya. For me personally, at least. I don't know whether you had a great time.
I did. I mean, I
Tell me
love
your
talking.
experience.
I love talking. That's one thing. But in general, I think that, like you said, industrial design is not spoken about enough. And there's a lot of people I know who would love to talk
Hmm.
about it. And I feel like there's a lot more experienced people, a lot more people that actually have made an impact in this industry that would love for it to be spoken about a little bit more. So
Hmm.
while I'm one person that can have this discussion, I think there's a lot of people out there that would want to speak as well. And I think there's a lot of people who could benefit from just understanding that this field exists, especially people who are trying to figure out career paths and career directions and don't fully understand what it takes to be a designer or an industrial designer. And I'm happy to contribute to that in some way. And also, I like to be honest about my journey and say that I still don't know what I'm doing. I still have no idea where I'm at. And every day, like I said, is I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm figuring out whether this is something I see long term. And there's a lot of things will forever be question marks, but this is one of the things that I'm
Hmm.
really happy I took the plunge and decided to just do, and it worked out in the end. So that's kind of what I like to share in general, and I'm happy to have had this platform to talk about it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. This was, I think, all for today.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
I'll not take any more of your weekend.
No,
Hope you
no,
have
don't
a
worry about
great
it.
weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much,
All
Sanidhya,
right.
and all the best with
Thank
this
you.
podcast. I hope you find
Sure.
more uncharted topics and industries that you
Yeah.
get to explore this way. And I hope that you know a little bit more about industrial design than you did
Hmm.
an hour ago. So, yeah.
For sure. Sure.